How's it going, everyone? This is Paul Garcia of ProjectSpurs.com, bringing you the latest Project Spurs vidcast over the San Antonio Spurs' 106-99 victory of the Miami Heat on Sunday, which was the Spurs' second night of a back-to-back. So San Antonio improves to 4-0 on the season after sweeping their first back-to-back of the season. Be sure to visit us at ProjectSpurs.com. Follow us on Twitter at Project Spurs, and also my Twitter account at Paul Garcia PS. Let's go ahead and jump into the vidcast. Alright, so before the game on Sunday, I had put out the Twitter poll. I asked who would win. Vegas had the Spurs by 6.5 against Miami. Later on in the day, the Spurs announced that LaMarcus Aldridge would actually be sitting out due to rest. So he and Danny Green were both out against the Heat. Congratulations to the 11% of you that called the Spurs to win by 7 points, because that is exactly how much they won by, which is exactly 7 points, 106-99. Although the majority felt that it was going to be more than 7. And as we get into the game a little bit further, it should have been basically more than 7, considering the lead that the Spurs had on the Heat. The next game is going to be Tuesday against Utah, so I'll have that Twitter poll probably Monday evening or Tuesday whenever Vegas puts out those odds. I should have that poll so that we can get your vote in and see how you predict the game. Your top performers, with Aldridge out, Kawhi Leonard remained as the lone All-Star who continued to have an impressive night. Pau Gasol, for the first time, had a breakout game. With the Spurs 4 games into the season, so he was one of the top performers, and then back-to-back games now for Patty Mills as being one of the top performers for San Antonio. So first, let's dive into Kawhi. 27 points on 16 shots. Saturday night, he scored 16 against the Pelicans in the third quarter, so he went out and put 16 on the Heat in the fourth quarter. 2 rebounds, again, kept the ball moving, considering he was getting a little bit more double teams again in the post through the first 3 quarters. 6 assists, and then he made 10 free throws, continually got to the line 30 minutes. And he only played in 30 minutes, should I say. So let's go ahead and go through a breakdown. For the first 3 quarters, Kawhi wasn't having his best game. Through the first 3 quarters, he was only shooting 4 of 10 from the floor. He was actually in foul trouble in the first half. He had 3 early fouls. So Pop actually had to sit him midway through the second quarter. And so he really wasn't getting involved too much. He couldn't really get his rhythm. However, in the fourth quarter, he just took over. Like it says there, 16 points he put on there. He scored the last 12 points for San Antonio down the stretch. And so what was interesting was that it was a close game, possession by possession basketball, final minutes, it's going down the stretch. And you really saw that Kawhi has taken the responsibility of being the Spurs' closer. Now, it is 4 games into the season, but this is something that you have to consider. Last year when they lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the second round, there was those very tight games where you just wanted to see either Kawhi or LaMarcus, one of those 2 guys, get to the free throw line. Be the guy to take that really tough shot and execute it. And at that point, it still kind of looked like Kawhi was a little tentative in some of those games down the stretch against the Thunder. If he saw a double team, he wouldn't try to attack it. If he saw it was like, I remember Andre Robertson or Deion Waiters were the guys guarding him possessions, and Tony Parker ended up having to take those last minute shots. So now you can tell Kawhi has that confidence right now. He's basically, if his shot's not going in, he's going to get to the free throw line. He very aggressive. He had one of those fadeaway pump fakes against Deion Waiters, and then he drew fouls on Waiters down the stretch. And on his free throws, he shot 8 of 10 from the free throw line in the fourth quarter alone, just the fourth quarter. Gasol had a season high 20 points. So Gasol, for one, he finally got into double figures. He hadn't done that in the first 3 games with the Spurs, and then 2, he actually put 20 points on the night. He had a double-double, 11 rebounds to go along with 3 assists and 2 blocks, and he only played in 31 minutes, which is his minutes were up, but with Aldridge sitting out, he was the main guy, along with Dwayne Dedmon, who we'll talk about a little bit later. They were both tasked with the duty of not only having to provide some offense, especially Gasol with those 20 points, but they also had to guard Hassan Whiteside on the defensive end. Gasol, he really showed his arsenal, posting up when he had the advantage. He really took advantage of the mid-range shots that Miami gave him, as well as spreading out the floor when Kawhi found him for a 3-pointer. Something from Sport VU, some data. Gasol really takes the shots that are given to him. With Hassan Whiteside, he wants to sit down in the paint and block shots. So he really wanted to step out on Gasol. And so according to Sport VU data, Gasol took 10 uncontested shots. So 10 of his 18 total shots were uncontested, according to their data, and he actually shot very well, 60%, 6 of 10 on those looks. So again, he's not forcing bad shots. He's taking what the defense is giving him, and it's being obviously a real good weapon for San Antonio. 4 games into the year. Patty Mills, he followed up a back-to-back night. Last night, Saturday, against the Pelicans, he scored 18 points as a starter in 3 quarters because they blew him out, basically. Well, he came off the bench now with Tony Parker starting again, and he still put up 18 points on 10 shots, and he only had to play in 25 minutes. So Patty was very efficient as well. Just like I saw, according to SportVU's data, of his 10 total shots, 6 of those were wide open for Patty Mills, according to their data, and he scored and he made 4 of those 6 shots, those uncontested looks. So Patty's obviously being the recipient of when Kawhi gets doubled, or the defense is swarming somebody else, and so he's getting those wide open looks, and he's taking advantage by drilling them when he gets those looks. So those were your 3 top performers for Sunday's game against the Heat for San Antonio on offense, and also on defense. Offensively, the Spurs didn't have a remarkable shooting night, 45%. They made their threes, 10 threes, 56% shooting. They did a really good job there. Like I mentioned, Patty was key there. He made four threes in the match. Bertans hit 2, and then a lot of guys had 1. Like Kawhi had 1 3-pointer, Powell had 1 3-pointer. They just have a lot of shooting all over this team right now with how they're constructed. Free throws, they mainly Kawhi, but they got there and they made 22 free throws. The team didn't get a high number of assists, 20 assists, and then a lot of that again has to do with 45% field goal shooting. Has to do with the Heat defense. You have to credit Miami's defense. They did a good job. They were protecting the paint. That was their game plan. They were preventing any kind of drive and kick action, and they would rotate very well so that if the Spurs did get a 3, it wasn't totally wide open all the time. It was more like very late in the shot clock. But the Spurs still did assist on 54% of their made shots, so it wasn't like they were like a ball hogging team. They were moving the ball still and scoring. Saturday, the Spurs were only held to 10 turnovers against the Pelicans, and I had mentioned how they were brewing some chemistry there very early, and that was a good sign. Well, guess what? 15 turnovers Sunday, so it kind of looked like the turnovers were finally the issue with some guys out. And Miami being that they're quick, they're athletic, they're fast, they really get out in the open court and take advantage of anytime you turn it over. So they put on 21 points against San Antonio's anytime they turned it over. Here was a real big key in the game. The bench. The Spurs' bench outscored the Heat 43-14. I mean, there was a point, I think it was in the third quarter, where they were being outscored the Heat 37-5. They have so many weapons right now, and it was actually a limited roster for San Antonio. Simmons puts up 6 points. Dwayne Dedmon, like I said, came off the bench, 9 points and 8 rebounds. Davis Bertans hit 2 threes for 6 points. Manu Ginobili 4 points, but he also gave San Antonio 2 assists, and like I said, Mills 18 points. So the bench again, it's consistently showing. It's only 4 games of the year, but they're actually being a dominant force, considering the bench lost David West and Boris Diaw, two mainstays on that bench the last year, and they're still being very effective. And something notable is that for now, 4th game in a row, the Spurs have built a double-digit lead, and this is their 3rd and 4th games, and 3 out of 4 games, should I say, the Spurs have now opened up a 15-point lead plus. Now, the key thing, though, about tonight was that Miami did make their comeback. They actually did retake the lead in the 3rd quarter, and it was a dogfight right there down the stretch into the closing minutes of the game before Kawhi kind of put it away for San Antonio. So it wasn't like it was a blowout. It was more that Miami kind of made their comeback, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. The percentage of the points, it was pretty much a balanced shooting night. 30% came from the paint, 28% of their offense came from 3. 21% from the free throw, and then 21% from mid-range. So for San Antonio's offense, as you can see, all 4 areas of the chart are pretty much spread out. So it was an even game. They attacked Miami from all 4 points. Defensively, the Heat did shoot 46% from the floor. For San Antonio, you probably want to lower that just a little bit. They made 7 of 20 threes. They don't have a lot of shooting. They did make them though. 35% would have been league average last year, but they still haven't got some of their guys back like Josh Richardson isn't ready yet, and he would be a really good 3-point shooter for them. And then Roddy McGruder, the Spurs did a good job of not allowing him out of threes, who he had been on fire the last game. On the boards, the Spurs, despite the Heat having Hassan Whiteside, they did hold the Heat to just they out rebounded the Heat by 8 rebounds, and they kept them off the offensive glass just 6, which isn't too bad. And like I said, when you turn over the ball against Miami, they're so quick and athletic that they do get out of the break. So they scored 15 points on the Spurs' defense. Some other defensive notes, it was, like I said, it was mainly Pau Gasol and Dwayne Dedmon who were tasked with the duty of having to guard Hassan Whiteside. And I do have to give Whiteside and the Heat some credit. They actually played a very good game despite getting down by 16 points. Whiteside finished with 27 points, 15 rebounds, and 4 blocks. There was a sequence in the fourth quarter where he got real tight in one of his I think it was he had a cramp. There you go. He had a cramp in the game, so he was out for a few minutes right when the Heat were making their comeback. So you never know what would have happened, the outcome had he not had that cramp come about. But still, he was. I was very impressed by Whiteside. Coming into the season in the past in the summer, I really felt that Whiteside was getting that deal because one, the cap spike. The Heat knew they might they might have to invest some money in him or else decide on Dwayne Wade. Whiteside was going to be their future because of the Chris Bosh situation. So for me, it was more like money-wise, it was going to be there for Whiteside just because of his production of being a blocker and a guy who gets rebounds and stuff, and these massive numbers. But I was actually very impressive with his offensive game. He showed he was smart in being in the right place at the right time on putbacks. He had a really nice soft little lob with his hook shot. He actually made a few mid-range jumpers as well. So Whiteside, for all that money, he's actually earning it. Obviously it's a few games into the year, but from what I saw on him on the offensive end, he played a really good, solid game for Miami. He kept them in there as their anchor. And just overall as a roster, I want to just say that the Heat have a really good team that they're cooking there in Miami. They held a 19-point lead against the Magic in their first game. They blew them out. Then against the Hornets, they held another 19-point lead, but the Hornets did make that comeback on them to win the game. And then against San Antonio, they're down 16, and they actually came back and got the lead. They have a lot of good pieces that are young right now, and they're actually putting something together. Justice Winslow shoots over 50% with 18 points. Like we said, Whiteside. Dragic, 25 points and 5 assists. Tyler Johnson, 12 points off the bench. So these guys are all young. And the head coach Eric Spoelstra is really putting together a really solid program right now, and he's a good coach, and he's really getting them to buy in, and they're playing a really good complete game right now, considering how young they are and how quick and athletic they can be. Defensively, the Heat mainly got their points from the paint. They hit a few 3-pointers, and then the free throw line and mid range. So overall, mainly very much like the Pelicans, the Spurs kind of, they kind of had their, because they have two dominant big men, Anthony Davis and then Hassan Whiteside. So the Spurs kind of have to live with giving up some of that area of the paint. But overall, they took away some of the other areas to hold Miami down. Something to note is that the Spurs now defensively, it's obviously 4 games into the year, but they've only let the Warriors score 100 points on them. They held the Heat to 99, the Pelicans to 79, and then the Kings, I think, to 97. So it's 4 games of the year. They're scrambling these different lineups with resting guys already early, but they're actually playing a good defensive game overall. San Antonio is. Up next, 2 former Spurs visit San Antonio in the AT&T Center on Tuesday. The Spurs take on the Utah Jazz, where George Hill, former point guard, will be here in town, as well as Boris Diaw, who is a fan favorite. Well, both those guys are fan favorites, but Diaw mainly because he's been around the last few seasons. He was part of that 2014 championship team. He was a real big community person. Everybody knew about the coffee and all his joking and all his different wild adventures and safaris, and he was all over the place. Diaw's still a character that the Jazz fans are definitely going to appreciate, and their media people as well. So they take on the Jazz at 7:30 p.m. The Jazz are kind of struggling a little bit. They're 1-2 to start the year. They are missing Gordon Hayward, who's injured to start. So I think like the first 6 weeks. But you do have to look at this, that the Jazz did open up against the Blazers, who are a pretty good team, and also they just lost to the Clippers. Their only easy game has been basically the Lakers. So the Jazz, it's hard to get a good reading on them because of the competition they've played to open the year. Be sure to check out ProjectSpurs.com. Follow us on Twitter as well. We'll have a lot of different articles and breakdowns of how the team's doing, very much detailed. A lot of our writers are coming up with really good stuff right now. As I mentioned in the last vidcast, they're really taking apart different aspects of the team, and they're really going detailed into some of the advanced data on the players. And then also listen to Ryan and Jose's Spurs cast as well. They usually have a weekly podcast now that the season is kicked off, so they'll be going over the last few games and talking about some themes that are going on with the team here over at Project Spurs. So for Project Spurs, this is Paul Garcia. Have a good night.